Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of a Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Hello, everybody.
Welcome, everyone, to this podcast. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. And welcome to this podcast called Strengthening Literacy Through the Arts. And we're delighted to have Professor Robyn Ewing with us today. Robyn is Professor Emerita of Teacher Education and the Arts and co-director of the Creativity and Research Engaging the Arts, Transforming Education, Health and Wellbeing Centre. Welcome, Robyn. How are you?
Thank you, Phil and Sharon. I'm very well.
Wonderful.
And Robyn, you've got a particular passion with the arts? Yep.
I certainly have. It's been part of my pedagogy for my whole career and before.
You were born with it.
Yes.
We all are.
Yeah. Good point there. That's what we're really exploring today, isn't it? That it's a natural but sometimes missing part for our experiences.
So you taught for many years, and you focused on the arts in that time as you continued your teaching, or was it just grew as you went, or what happened?
I always had a passion for particularly drama and dance. I grew up fortunate enough to have speech and drama and dance as part of my childhood, and I wasn't as confident about music or visual arts, partly because I was discouraged when my sixth grade teacher fixed up my drawing of a tree before he put it on the wall. And so I quickly got the message that I wasn't good at art. That was the only drawing that ever went up. And I was told when I was young that I couldn't sing. So as an adult, I went back to learn how to sing. I actually can sing. But again, that was sort of some of the baggage, I suppose, as a young person that I had to get through.
It's amazing those things can have such an influence at a young age, can't they?
They definitely do. And I think that lots of teachers don't feel confident about teaching all of the different art forms because sometimes they have had experiences like mine about one art form or another, or indeed about another curriculum area.
Yes, I was just going to say, I think that's probably true, isn't it, of across all of the areas where if we haven't felt, particularly if a teacher hasn't made us feel that we are successful at it, that it's hard for us to rise above that then.
Yes, but I think it's really important because it's not about being the next Kate Blanchett or Hugh Jackman or, the next wonderful artist or musician. It's about the arts processes and strategies that are really important across the curriculum.
Why are they so important?
Well, first of all, because they're part of who we are as human beings. So if you think about our history, the arts are as old as we are. from those very first cave paintings, etc. And earlier you acknowledged our First Nations Australians. In their culture, and I believe in most Indigenous cultures all over the world, story and the arts are at the centre of all that they do and of their curriculum. And I think we have so much to learn from that.
And we have it in our curriculum, in the Australian curriculum, but it's could be focused on more, do you think?
Well, yes, we do have it in our Australian curriculum, but remember initially it wasn't scheduled to be there. It was only because of the incredible advocacy of the National Arts Advocates in Education Association and a whole lot of arts celebrities who advocated really strongly that we needed to have the arts in the national curriculum, that it actually made the second phase. And yes, we do have an arts curriculum, but it has not had the same kind of emphasis as some of our other key learning areas. The arts often seems to be the poor relation. And generally, I would say across Australian society, you will find governments continually cutting the funding to arts organisations and arts programs, and certainly it's been cut and cut and cut in teacher education. And that's extraordinary given the research that demonstrates how important the arts are for who we are as human beings, but also for how the arts can engage and motivate learners across all of the different areas that they're learning in.
Yeah, well, I was interestingly, I do teach music at a school and
in a primary school.
And I've started a rock band, and all these boys are just gifted at music. We've only discovered this through forming the band, and
well, they probably knew, but
yeah,
they hadn't had an opportunity to.
No.
And they would say that their other academic areas aren't that strong, but this has really changed them. A parent today was just telling me how amazing the change has been in these boys because of this this music they're starting to play.
Yes, yeah. and the research over the last 3 decades is unequivocal that students who engage in quality arts experiences and processes do better, first of all, socially and emotionally in terms of their well-being. And I think that relates to what I said earlier about the arts are important for who we are, but also do better academically in other subjects, not just art subjects.
Yep.
And those that are followed into adulthood, which there are ways of doing that in other countries, not necessarily here, but they actually are also more responsible citizens, if you like. They are more involved in community service, etc., etc. So I have never understood why, given the research that we have, the arts is so low on the pecking order often, both in school, in education, but also if you think about what we've just experienced with COVID, the arts were not supported in the same way lots of other professions were.
No, that's right.
And yet if we supported it, it would then strengthen all those other areas that we're trying to strengthen,
That's exactly right.
The ones that we're focusing on. Yeah.
I mean, I'm no economist, but I reckon if you did a cost-benefit analysis and looked at putting into practice what the research tells us to do, and that is give all children from early childhood right through not just school but at university, etc., quality arts experiences and processes embedded in what they're doing, we wouldn't have to then use the arts to go in and fix up what's happening in vulnerable and at-risk communities, which often is the case.
Yeah.
So, Robyn, when you mentioned, that a quality arts program is the tool that really makes a difference, how can we as teachers, if we haven't necessarily been trained in delivering a quality arts program, in what ways, or what are some of the, for want of a better term, some of the high impact things that we can do as teachers to enhance literacy?
Well, I think one of the things that I referred to earlier is that quite a lot of teachers lack confidence and expertise in using art strategies and experiences when teaching, and particularly we're talking about teaching literacy. So I think the first thing is to rediscover their own artistry as teachers first.
Nice.
And I think that's often been lost in terms of the way our profession is often blamed for, issues that are happening in education, and the status of our profession, certainly fallen over my career as a teacher.
Yes.
And yet every teaching act, when thought through and reflected upon, is artistry. And so, first of all, I think we have to, as teachers, regain our confidence in the expertise and skill that we already have. Second, I think if there are areas that we're not feeling confident in, we have to make a conscious effort to develop our understanding and expertise in those areas, and not in terms of us being experts in a sense, but in terms of us coming to understand the processes that, can be really effective in terms of helping our learners become deeply literate. So for example, every piece of quality literature is an art form.
Yep.
The literary arts often aren't thought about when we talk about the arts, because sadly our Australian curriculum silos everything. And so even though literature is a huge part of the English curriculum, it is not mentioned at the moment anyway in the arts curriculum.
Right.
But if we think about the artistry that goes into a quality literary text, that, we think about also the incredible artistry that goes into the images, the illustrations in picture books. And we already have that really important resource in our classroom, hopefully.
Yes.
I mean, sadly, I think perhaps more recently there's been a de-emphasis on that with some of the push that we've had towards using contrived texts rather than texts that are authentic.
Yes, because there are wonderful big books that we see in libraries and schools, but to get them. And Sharon, you were talking about trying to get those into classrooms.
Yeah, but not just big books.
Oh, not just big books,
there's
no.
that. Yes, bringing literature. And that's such a powerful point to make, Robyn, because that's something that teachers can bring and not have to feel like they have any art experience to bring that. It's the art itself can do the work, can't it? The books, the illustrations, right. The writing, and it's something that, I mean, we can't be expert at that, but letting the book do the work, letting the literature and the work of the illustrator do the work for us, and the appreciation that students can have for that by being exposed to it, and recreate some of those things, let that spill into their own artwork, their own writing.
Exactly. As I'm reminded as you were talking of Margaret Meek
Yes.
work about how texts teach what readers learn, in a sense. There is exactly so many lessons from quality literary texts and teachers already have a whole repertoire of understanding and skills and expertise about working with literary texts, about wondering about what the text is about and predicting what might happen. And those kinds of strategies then can easily be enriched through adding some drama strategies to that. So embodying what's happening in the text or embodying the concepts or the themes that the text is about, enacting parts of the story or enacting what you predict the story might be about. So there's a whole lot of arts, processes and strategies that can be embedded in the English and literacy lesson without it being another thing that the teacher has to find time to do. If I think about drawing, for example, we have too often seen drawing as something that we do at the end of an activity, to make something look attractive. But in fact, the research shows again very clearly, and Noella Mackenzie's work is really important here, that drawing is so important for organising our understanding of things, and yet again, it's often not given the importance that it should be in the classroom.
Yes, because we do sometimes hear ourselves say, write first and then use drawing, as you say, to beautify something rather than using the drawing as the expression and then being able to make sense, or using
That's
the drawing
right.
for making sense.
Exactly, because the neuroscientific research says very clearly again that if we embody something first, then we move to visualizing it, we're far more likely then to be able to make those deep connections and that deep meaning. And then we can write about it. And I think that's slowing down the process to some extent, but it certainly really encourages learners, to really go beneath the surface of a text to understand the meaning underneath, what's being inferred, etc., but also to challenge what's there and not necessarily accept it. Measure it against their own experience and ask questions, etc. And similarly, all of the other art forms are different ways of making meaning, different ways of representing our understanding, different ways of challenging our understanding and helping us look at things in a different way. And so all of the art forms can be used in that way to help us make, deep meaning. And I think that's what literacy is all about.
Yes.
Sadly, I think sometimes, we get lost in concentrating on perhaps some of the superficial kind of skills. And I'm not saying they're not important, but, getting to that deep understanding is also very important.
Yeah. Do I've just made, a connection, I guess. When you were talking right at the beginning, Robyn, about that the arts are a part of us, they're a way of us being. And I think that's one place where in the Australian curriculum, buried somewhere in, how English works, or one of those where you have to sort of burrow down into the curriculum, it talks about the importance of texts really, like texts are there and literature is there to help us learn more about the world, ourselves
Yes.
and others.
Exactly. And again, the research is very clear that those people who engage in reading imaginative fiction
Mm-hmm.
are much more likely to be empathetic, compassionate people because of exactly what you've just said. Because first of all, we start to understand who we are better and what our place in the world is, but then we start to understand others better and the fact that there are so many different perspectives and that we don't necessarily have the right answer about so many things. Or perhaps that there isn't a right answer about lots of things.
Yes, yeah.
There are many different kinds of truths.
And there's the power for the teacher. Bringing the literature to students, of course, enables all of those things then to come to play. So
Yes.
the discussion of those things,
Yes.
they're things that we as people can't necessarily bring for ourselves. We might not have those stories to share. So literature can really, as I said before, really do the heavy lift for us as teachers.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, but also we can create the stories too with our learners.
Yes.
So there's a lot to be said for story making together, and often that's a really good place to start in terms of modelling possibilities and encouraging our learners then, to feel confident about making their own stories, or we've always talked about innovating on the text, taking the text as a jumping off point and creating something new or seeing it from a different perspective.
I was just I was just going to say I'm just being taken back to many, many years ago now where, in offering students, that opportunity to innovate and adapt on text, where a child said to me, Mrs. Callan, nowhere here have you provided any musical score paper.
Exactly.
And at that point I thought, I've missed a big chunk here. That was, it hadn't, I don't know why I hadn't, as soon as it was said, I thought, of course that should be here. But then that also opened up what else is missing here and what other avenues haven't been provided for students to express.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think too often we privilege the written over all of the other ways of expressing and communicating our thoughts and ideas. And as you say, if we give our learners the opportunity to make some of those choices, how best can they respond to this text? Is it through dance and movement or through collage or drawing or painting? Or is it through some kind of performance? Or is it through, music making, etc.? Or is it through some kind of use of media? That young children today are so much more expert at those kinds of things as well. So, I think it is about providing those opportunities and those resources and encouraging our learners to respond in different ways to what they're thinking about, what they're hearing, what they're reading, what they're listening to, etc.
We can really open some more doors, can't we?
Certainly can. And there's also, a whole lot of research around how important learning a musical instrument is for our literacy skills and our memories, etc. I think it's about 2 years of learning an instrument can have a lifelong impact on those cognitive abilities. So, we have so much evidence about how important the arts are, and yet they're often left out, or they're often the thing that you do on a rainy, windy afternoon, or as a break between one thing and another, instead of thinking about, how central they should be. And we don't, particularly as primary teachers, I think, survive unless we think about meaningfully integrating the different key learning areas. And, this is a way to do it.
The arts is kind of the glue between all the subjects, isn't it? Really, it can hold it all together.
Well, certainly in terms of engagement and motivation too. It can certainly really engage your learners in any of those areas, yeah. So perhaps even more than the glue, it's a framework.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
So a teacher who wants to change, is hearing this podcast, they want to get more into this. What's some easy steps they could take, Robyn?
Well, there are quite a few different professional learning opportunities that are available if teachers want to take some steps in this direction. Just as one example, something that I've been involved in for the last 12 years with Sydney Theatre Company is the school drama program, which involves teachers and teaching artists working together on using quality literature and drama strategies to develop particular areas of literacy. And that's a program that is all over Australia now and in New Zealand. And I think I've given you some details about that.
Yeah, we'll make sure those links are in the show notes so everyone can go to those.
The Australian Theatre for Young People has just developed some, again, these are online teaching professional learning resources, helping teachers use drama strategies with literacy to teach history. And again, they're available. I'll send those details through as well.
Yeah.
They're also going to now be working on using those strategies to teach science. So they're just two examples of the kinds of professional learning resources that are there. And of course, there are lots of books and resources around the kinds of strategies that are really important for helping children learn about literature and literary text.
There's a bit of nervousness from an average classroom teacher who may have the skills there for taking drama, but they just find it a bit of a contrast to what they normally do in the classroom, and whether they're going to lose control of the children or whatever. There's kind of the stepping off point is hard for them.
Yeah. And I think that that's why sometimes professional learning, does help with that, because it's the same as learning anything, I guess.
Yep.
There is a point where we have to sort of, as you say, jump off or take that risk. Mm-hmm. And I think there are lots of strategies for making sure that, it's not something that's going to mean you're going to lose control of the class or anything like that. It's about setting, clear boundaries about what's going to happen. I always use, some way of making sure that if we need to stop, there's a signal that everybody stops, or another signal for when we need to all come back into our learning circle. There are lots of these strategies. There are constraints within the actual strategy itself. So, for example, if you're going to sculpt a character, you're going to sculpt a partner into a particular character, then, the person being sculpted is thinking clay, they can do what you're asking or showing them to do, but they can't argue with the sculptor, for example. And they know that in a few minutes they're going to get to be the sculptor themselves. So I think it's we always say that we want our learners to be encouraged to take risks. I think it sometimes does mean we have to, as you say, step out of our comfort zone and take some risks as well. I had recently did that as an adult. My daughters gave me painting classes as a retirement gift because they said, if we don't book you in, Mum, you'll talk about it forever and you'll never do it. And so over the last 18 months, I've been learning to paint. Remember, I said I was reluctant as a retiree. That was an area I wasn't confident in. Yes. Yep. But certainly it has been the most amazing experience. Not that I'm going to, sell lots of paintings and become a, notable artist or anything. It's again those arts processes that have been so important. And if I can do it at my age, any of us can, again, think about those arts processes which are common to all arts disciplines, like play and experimentation, exploration, communication, expression, etc. So it is something we have to step out and do if we believe it's important.
And I'm guessing there's a transfer when you become more confident in, say, something like drama or even visual arts, or there's a transfer over to your other subject areas that you're teaching. For instance, when I do a drama lesson, I, talk about what makes a good audience and what makes a good performer, and, then those things can be used in any subject area,
exactly.
When you're presenting in front of the class. And and there's probably lots more examples of that I can't think of at the moment, but
One of the things that the children who've been involved in school drama talk about is that they feel they are becoming more confident, and they also talk about how they feel their imaginations are being switched on. So as you say, Phil, it's about those kind of processes, disposition skills that we're learning to use across the curriculum. And I think, again, our Australian curriculum capabilities talk about the importance of creativity, or the 4 C's talk about the importance of creative and critical thinking and communication, etc. So those kind of dispositions are regarded as really important. They're called 21st century skills, but I actually think they've always been important skills, not just for the 21st century. And sometimes they're called soft skills, but again, they're not soft at all. They're core skills that we all need. And I think the arts processes really articulate very closely to those kinds of creative indicators that we're all talking about. That is so important.
And perhaps the emphasis, I know we have a big emphasis on testing now, whereas, really we've been talking about on our podcast about transformative tracking, where the teacher can do much more, or in addition to that can do really rich assessment of what's happening in their classroom in really powerful ways. But the testing emphasis on the national level and state level has kind of said, certain subjects we can measure, so we'll make them a bit more important. That's probably
right. And they've been privileged in a sense. And yet, even for those subjects that are tested in that way, we all know that only certain aspects can be tested in that way. There are so many other things that can't be effectively assessed through a multiple choice test, or, what we've actually done, in a sense, unfortunately, by putting too much emphasis on those kind of tests, is reduce and narrow the curriculum, which should in fact be, much broader and very much, related across, rather than just sort of thinking about testing particular silo.
Yeah.
Yes, and so even though that's sort of testing, very narrow range of things, the more we can open up the variety of ways that students can learn to express and create and comprehend, take in, the more, I suppose, being able to do that across different art forms. But we're certainly going to speak to some children in stronger ways, aren't we, if they can express in particular ways. And we might be losing some of those if we're not actually, opening that range of art forms to them.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because we all learn differently. We're all unique. We all bring different experiences to the learning process, and we need the opportunity to be able then to represent our learning in different ways. There's not just one way of showing what we know, and I think that's the other thing. There are so many ways that the sorts of strategies we've been talking about can be used as assessment strategies. You record two learners having a conversation that's been triggered by what they've been reading, or you take a photo of the students who are representing what they believe is a critical moment in the story. That there is so many different ways that we can assess how our students are going, which, is going to add, if you like, to our understanding of how they're going. We shouldn't just be depending too much on one kind of assessment strategy.
And now we've got the facility to take video more easily and communicate that with parents. So that lends itself to, showing what we've done in the arts and how things have changed. And I need to do more of that.
We all do.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess it also reminds me of how much, as adults, the more we're involved in the arts, whether that's going to an exhibition, walking our streets and noticing sculptures in the street, viewing the landscape, all of these things, we need to immerse ourselves in those things to actually be sparked by the possibility of what we can do and have our students doing. Like you say, we don't have to be experts at these things, but it is about recognising the possibilities.
Yes, it's about, as you say, noticing and observing and sharing our insights and understandings, and having those conversations about how important all of those different things are. Sharing a really great photo of sunrise or sunset and talking about it is important too. Though I think it's as much about us being aware of how important all of those different arts disciplines are to our world and to who we are, and sharing that and providing opportunities for all of our students to experience those different art forms and play with them and talk about the different kinds of feelings and experiences that different art forms provide for us. That's a real starting point. And as I say, we can all learn. I feel so much more confident now about teaching visual arts. As you say, that learning, even at my age, has already allowed me to do lots of things I would never have done before in that area.
How exciting. Isn't it wonderful? We continue on this learning journey, and the more I remember, I reckon it was about my third year of teaching where a colleague said, do you know, you spend a lot of time at school on the weekend, Sharon. What you need to be doing is going out there and experiencing so many things that you can bring back to the classroom on a Monday.
Yes.
So, and sometimes I think that's, we can look at the curriculum through that lens of the arts, or we can look at the curriculum and it can look very two-dimensional. And as you say, just, not really bringing in the emotive side, the sharing side, the expressing in many different ways side. So I feel just the same as you feel. I can be doing much better in that area too.
Well, I was going to say, I started off, my first few years of teaching were as an arts teacher, drama, music, art.
Yes.
And then I, for some reason, thought I, better get into classroom teaching, which I did.
Yes.
And
into the real job.
Well, Well, I really adored that arts job, but I went into the classroom teaching. I loved as well, but wherever I could, I tried to bring the arts into my classroom teaching. I would, I'd do a drama production after school or whatever, because I was just trying to, it was within me. So now that I'm, a little bit older, I've gone. I won't say back into, but forward into just teaching music, and I'm just loving it. And that was all within me already, and I'm just so lucky to be doing it. I just love it.
And I read an article today about how Einstein's parents gave him two really important gifts as a child when he was very sick. One was a compass, which really sparked his curiosity and led him to ask lots of questions, and the other was a violin, which was so important in terms of, his thinking and imagination in lots of other different ways. And so it just resonated with me that someone who apparently was quite delayed in learning to talk and certainly had some difficulties at school, but those kind of experiences were really important to his development and to the things that he did for us, later in life. So we must, I think, always make sure that quality art strategies and experiences are embedded in what we're doing, wherever, at whatever level we're teaching, from early childhood all the way.
Yes, yeah.
And as classroom teachers, we can bring in the arts wherever we can, really. We've got
exactly.
We've got that power to do that.
Yes, we have. And
just helping it, getting that professional development to build our confidence and just try new things.
Yeah.
But I think a big point that you've made too, Robyn, is that we don't have to carve out, we may be thinking, well, where would we have time for this? But it is about integrating it into.
Yes.
Because that's its power, actually, is that once it's integrated, connected with other things, it's giving sense and power to that combination. Whether it's thinking about text or whether it's creating it or not necessarily text, but story or information or whatever.
Or responding to a text in some way.
Yes, yes.
What gives me great hope is Australia is a very clever, we are a clever people, and we are clever educators, and choosing to do this will make us an even stronger country, really, to get the arts really embedded in what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think we really do need to do it. I think it's imperative that we embed more arts processes and experiences in our curriculum. If we don't, our students are not necessarily having the opportunity to keep nurturing their imaginations and creativity. And, that is so important
And how much,
what's going to happen for Australia in the future.
and how much is it helping our wellbeing?
Well, that's the whole point. If we get our social and emotional well-being right, then of course we're going to do better academically. Of course we're going to be more confident about taking risks. Of course we're going to be prepared to collaborate with others. And that, to me, is the first thing that we have to do. Instead of separating out social and emotional well-being from academic achievement, we have to see it as all part of what a learner needs to do their best and realise their potential.
We talk a lot about treating a teacher as a professional and making their professional choices in what they do in the classroom. That's really an important part of all this, isn't it? Because, there needs to be a lot of trust from parents, from politicians, from everybody, the community, in our teachers as professionals. Do you see that as a huge...
it's hugely important. And I think a lot of teachers do know the importance of the arts, but, they, as you have just suggested, sometimes they're not trusted to make those professional decisions. Sometimes, they're told, even with a script, exactly what they must do. And that's negating their knowledge of the learners that they're working with and the particular context that they're working in. And I do think that we haven't given enough credit to our teachers in this country. I think we too often are blaming them for things that we perceive are going wrong. And I think as a profession, we have to get stronger about asserting our knowledge and expertise and our understanding of what learning is all about. And I think that part of it is about educating our parent community. So where I've had the opportunity to talk to parents about the importance of the arts in their lives and for their children and why the arts is important in the curriculum, not just as extracurricular, which only some parents can afford to fund, there has been incredible transformation in the school community.
Yeah, and it should be that every child should be having an opportunity to have this, not just that if you've got, you can only get that if you can afford it.
That's right.
Because you can buy all these things, but, you can.
But our most vulnerable and our most at risk are in danger of missing out of those things because at the moment, the resources and the professional learning for the arts, is negligible in our schools. Yeah. There are some schools, of course, that have, great arts programs, but they're often in more advantaged contexts and communities. And yet the Australian curriculum does say that every child is entitled to rich learning in all of those different art forms. And that's not happening yet.
No, I think we're a little way off from that yet, aren't we?
Yeah, often there'll be one art form that will be funded in a school and, there's 5 others that aren't. But the emphasis, I guess, for us giving practical messages to teachers here today is that you can upskill yourself, you can take those beginning steps yourself and increase those opportunities for the kids in your class and start to talk to your parents about what you're doing and them seeing the benefits of what's happening, and they will spill over to the academic areas, as you've said. Yep,
that will happen, and it will improve their achievement in other subjects. So we know that. That's being demonstrated very clearly.
Yeah.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
No, well, it is,
Yeah.
thinking that maybe that's part of the life that we're looking for to bring back into the curriculum. That I think some teachers are feeling that, some of what they might have been doing around that feels like it may have been squeezed out a little bit.
Yes.
And so let's go hunt it down. Let's go chase it down. But I think where we began with it, just that rich literature that we can bring into our classroom every day, flood our children in story and artwork, and the opportunity to respond in lots of different ways is just a very doable way to reinvigorate art within within an any-day literacy block or English block or
very much. Yeah. And let's rediscover the artistry that is teaching and learning.
Oh, that's powerful.
Oh, now there's the bit of gold for, the artistry of teaching and learning.
Yeah, I've read this wonderful book about Aristotle, and there was, as part of a human being, we have the arts as at one side of us and science at the other, and it's not just about one. It's about both of those things together, working together.
In a holistic way.
That's right.
That's
right. So, Robyn, we might wrap up there, and we've got some rapid fire questions. Sometimes they're not very rapid, but anyway.
Yes.
How do you think you learn to read?
Well, I'm not completely sure, but I do know that my parents did read to me lots, and I can still remember my favourite story as a little girl was Madeline, because she was a little girl who wouldn't necessarily do what everybody else did. She had her own determination, and she was an individual. I can remember my mother telling me that at a very early age I could talk about all the different fairy tales and nursery rhymes, recite those, etc. So, she obviously spent a lot of time with me playing with language, and my parents always talked to us as, individuals. We had substantive conversations. So I think all of those things were important. I do know that I could learn to read, that I could read before I went to school, but I know that there were obviously some shortcomings, because I remember getting into trouble because I couldn't recite the alphabet off by heart, for example. So, I'm not exactly sure, but I think those things were really important.
Yeah. And some good resources a teacher can have on hand for teaching literacy through the arts?
Well, I think I've already talked a little bit about that. I think, first of all, quality literature, good oral stories as well to share, poetry, reading poetry, different sorts of poems, etc., and all sorts of drama strategies that you can integrate with movement. Resources for visual arts. You don't need really expensive resources. You just need lots of paper and oil pastels and paint.
Yeah, just
charcoal,
responding to the quality literature. Really, that's a
that's to respond. That's right.
Yeah. Tips for parents helping children with reading, writing, and through the arts, or just helping?
Well, I think, again, taking the time to talk with your child and to wonder with them and imagine with them, and to, when you're reading, to share with them how what you're reading relates to your experience, as well as to ask them, to share how the sense that they're making of it. And, you know, again, for your children to see you writing for a whole lot of different purposes and to talk about why. You know, I think it's just about opening up those worlds as much as you can in meaningful ways so that they understand that it is about making meaning.
So the conversations are really important, aren't they, to talk about all the things that you're doing and why you're doing them? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And the conversations about what you're reading and what you're writing, they're important as well. And I suppose the other thing is to be a good listener. And that's something that perhaps when we're so busy and we're so rushed, we're not always good at being, teachers or parents.
That's true. That's true. Tips for school leaders on coordinating literacy across the school?
Well, I think it's really important for school leaders to also keep abreast of, you know, what the research says about literacy and what it says about the importance of the arts, and to work, you know, with their teachers in a collaborative way to see how it can best be done and what resources, you know, are most needed, and to come together to make those decisions. Thinking about the particular cohorts and the particular contexts. I think sadly a lot of principles are being dictated to as well. And, you know, there's no such thing as a like school or a single recipe about how to do things. It's about, you know, working as a team to work out what's best for that unique little group of people.
Fabulous. What do you love most about teaching and learning?
Well, I love teaching because it is learning. I remember Nancy. Is it Nancy Martin who wrote that book that's called The Word for Teaching? The Word for Teaching is learning. I love how, you know, you learn every minute of the day from the children, the young people that you're working with. And I love watching their learning and the moment when they have some kind of epiphany about something. It's just priceless.
It's magic, isn't it? Those really incredible moments. A favourite recent story about learning, or with a child or a teacher?
Well, I found this one really hard because I just see it happening all the time. And one of the most precious things that I've been able to do as a grandmother is watch my grandchildren learn to read and just make the most amazing strides in their learning every day. And I think it's because as a grandmother, I'm not kind of as involved in the day-to-day for what's happening for them. I can observe, and that's just been so special.
And isn't that observation such an important piece for us as teachers? You know, teachers, parents, grandparents, because as a grandmother you don't have any high-stakes testing you have to worry about.
No, that's right. Exactly.
But I think as a teacher, I really you sort of have to jolt yourself into doing more observing and more, looking at what children are doing. It's just something you have to work on, I find anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have to stop ourselves from rushing. You know, that there's so much pressure on covering everything. Yeah. And yet if we slow down what we're doing and really focus on deep understanding and deep meaning, we get so much further anyway. But we have to give ourselves permission to do that.
Yeah. Often we can be our own worst enemies by putting the pressures on ourselves.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Robyn, for a fantastic podcast and
for your insights, for your expertise, your we know that you've got a whole lot of resources that will be in the show notes that people can tap into. And we know that thanks to you, there are things that tomorrow or if people are listening to this in the morning, that day there are immediate ways for the arts to be reignited in classrooms.
Yeah, I think most of all you've given teachers listening a lot of confidence about it being such an important aspect that's going to help all other aspects of a child's learning, all the other subject areas. So it's just so critical. So thank you so much, Robyn.
Well, it's been such a privilege and it's been such a pleasure to have that conversation together. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. Opening up worlds. That's what you've done for us. I love that. That's what the arts do, and that's what you've brought for us today. So thank you so much for your generous spirit and, the opportunity to discuss something that makes such a difference for our learners. And, as teachers, we're all looking for, we're all trying to find the very best things that we can bring to our children every day.
Anyway, thank you, Robyn, and thank you,
Pleasure.
Sharon, and thanks everyone for listening today.
Yes.
Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.